call the Troy Personnel Board meeting to order.
Okay, so for the roll call, Jeffrey Forster,
Present.
Pamela Gordon,
Present.
David Haight,
Present.
Jane Parpart,
Present.
and Sackerson.
Present.
Okay, all present. So then for the first item is the appointment of the chairperson. Is there, I'll just do it. Is there a motion to appoint a chairperson as named? Is there someone who's willing to step up and volunteer to be the chairperson and insert their name in there?
How about one of you veterans of this committee?
I guess I'll nominate myself.
Okay. So,
Thank you, Jane.
Do you want, okay, just to be clear, do you want to move the resolution, resolve that members of the Troy Personnel Board hereby appoint Jane Parpart to serve as chair? Are you moving that resolution?
Yes.
Okay. And is there a second?
I'll second it.
They all jumped to the second.
Moved by Parpart, seconded by, I know I saw a couple people, seconded by Sackerson. Is there any discussion? Okay.
Thank you, Jane.
All in,
How long, I do have a question. How long is the appointment for?
till the next meeting. Basically, it's annual, but it would be till the next, assuming that we only meet once this year, since that's kind of been typical.
Sure.
It would be next year, whatever the first meeting is of the following year, where you'd appoint a new chairperson.
Sounds reasonable.
Any other discussion? Okay, this is for the vote. Mr. Forster?
Aye.
Okay, Ms. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. Haight?
Yes.
Ms. Parpart?
Yes.
Ms. Sackerson?
Yes.
Okay, it passes unanimously. Ms. Parpart, would you like to take over the meeting, or would you like me to continue?
I'll let you run this one.
Okay. Okay. So the next item is approval of the minutes of the March 16th, 2017 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Who was that?
Me.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I second it.
Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the minutes from 2017? Okay. Mr. Forster?
Yes.
Ms. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. Haight?
Yes.
Ms. Parpart?
Yes.
Ms. Sackerson?
Yes.
Okay. There is no old business. For new business, the first item is recommendations for classification plan and pay plan, and I believe Ms. Menig has some opening comments.
Thank you. I'd like to start with some background on how we got to the classification plan that is before you for consideration. And that background started that the city engaged a professional consultant named GovHR to conduct a comprehensive classification and compensation study for the city. And it covered the employees in this group that you oversee, the classified group, which are non-union full-time employees. And it also covered our other non-union full-time group, which is called exempt employees, and they're exempt from overtime. So the two groups, classified, which are the overtime eligible, non-union full-time, and exempt, which are the non-overtime eligible full-time non-union employees. This process kicked off quite some time ago in July of 2018. And it moved very slowly, but that is not anything against our consultant. We picked a lovely consultant who really led us through the process. The slowdowns were regarding our competing organizational priorities. The city had a lot of issues for a while that were competing. So it took until December of 2019 when the plan got to the point where the consultant came in and it was nearly complete. The consultant reviewed the preliminary results with all of the employees and gave them the opportunity to appeal if they thought that their classification, or if their supervisor thought their classification was improper. They had a process to appeal. So we collected those appeals. Now we're in March of 2020. I'm having my last conference call early March of 2020. Everyone knows what happened in March of 2020, right? Early in March of 2020, I've got we're in the home stretch, had my last phone call with the consultant, and we just had one more thing. We just had a couple more appeals to review, and then we were ready to move forward. So here we are now in March of 2021, and we're ready to move forward. Well, I have it written on my notes here that we had a pause. And now we're ready to move forward. So all of the appeals have been resolved, and the result of it is the plan that you see before you. Some more information that you might want to know about how the job evaluations were done. The process that the consultant used to develop the classification plan used a two-sided approach. They collected information on paper through what was called a job analysis questionnaire, and each incumbent, each employee in the position completed a job analysis questionnaire on their position. That was reviewed by their supervisor, their department head, so employees weren't going off rogue and making up things or inflating their duties. The supervisors were reviewing it. And then the consultants came in and had one-on-one conversations with each employee and each supervisor that would have supervision responsibilities over an individual in these classifications, and the department head. So all levels were evaluated. And what they did in this job analysis questionnaire was solicit information about the positions. The information included what education and experience they needed to do their job, what type of discretion they exercised as part of their job, what type of responsibility they had for policy development, for planning of their work. Oh, I'm getting a slow connection. I hope you can still hear me. Okay. I hope you can still hear me. I got a warning.
Yes, we can.
What type of supervision they're exercising. Good. What type of supervision they're exercising over others, technology they use, and their working conditions. So they really looked at all different aspects of the job and used a pointing system to try and equalize so that you could be strong in some of these, very high in some of these, and low in others. And another individual could be the opposite situation, yet end up with the same pointing. So it's not only highly educated individuals that are getting the high marks for their positions, in other words, or only people with supervision are getting high numbers. The combinations work together. So the overall classification plan that GovHR presented to us has 12 classification levels. You'll see the information you received has 7 indicated. The other 5 levels are those exempt employees. And what's interesting is our previous plan also had 12 levels, but over the years there was no longer anyone in a grade 1, and there were certain times where there was no one in grade 2 either. There was a little bit of creep, I would say, in the old plan. So now we've been stretched out again. There are classifications in all of the 12 levels. And then the other side of it that the City Council will review, but this board doesn't actually review, is there's a classification plan that you're looking at, and then there's a pay plan that links pay ranges to each of those grade levels. So the city council will review and approve that pay plan. Our consultant also did surveys outside of the city for external competitiveness to make sure that those wages were competitive and appropriate for the job titles that are in the classification. And then the final thing that I thought you might have a question about, if I could anticipate all your questions, you certainly will be able to ask me any questions you have. The other question that I thought you might have is why it has a May 1st effective date. Usually at the city, we run with our fiscal year of July 1 to make things effective. You'll see that the past history of classification plans were almost always July 1. This year, because the classifications are changing for a number of people, we need to implement that into our payroll and HR computer system. And I aligned it with one of our pay periods that was coming up. So May 1st is the beginning of a pay period. It makes it very easy for us to implement these changes because basically in that system we have to take off a classification and put on a new one for most of these individuals because there's a little bit of movement for just about everyone, if not relative, at least. There were a 3 before, and now there are 4 because of where they landed. So the May 1st is kind of a functional date that will accomplish that for us. Let's see if I anticipated all your questions. That was everything that I wanted to present to explain the classification plan, but I am happy to answer anything that might be a question in your mind.
I've got a couple of questions. Number one, how many people is this going to affect?
So you can see on the classification plan, there are, hold on, I counted these before I started. I just need to
So
find
each
my
one of
notes.
those is someone that is a job position.
There's 28 positions, but some of those positions have multiple people in them. So to answer your direct question, it's 53 employees in the classified service that are in those 28 different positions.
And again, so I can understand what each one of those grades is. There's a salary range for those grades, and those people will hopefully fall in those grades. Is that correct?
Yes. So we don't have a step system. Some organizations and our unions have step systems that methodically put people through. We have a merit-based system, but yes, each individual will be within those ranges. Luckily, our previous ranges were so wide that we were able to do some adjustments ahead of time. So there won't be a massive adjustment, but there will be there could be a couple individuals that needed to come up to a new minimum level as they get placed into their new range. Those would be effectuated on May 1st as well, and then they'd have that range to move through our merit system up to the maximum.
Are there any people that are outside the range or beyond the range in those positions?
I do have a question.
Yes.
Are there formal job descriptions that go with, for example, administrative assistant? Let's say there's 3 of those. Are there formal job descriptions?
Yes. For each classification. However, I do have to be 100% honest. Some of them have not been updated in a long time, and it is always that job that never gets done. There's always something else that's competing to get it done. But we keep moving toward it and trying to keep them updated. The good news now is that we have, in terms of the job analysis questionnaire, everything we need to translate that into an updated job description. We have all the tools. We just need to take it out of those and put them in the right the right format. And so it's much more possible now that we will move through that heavy task of getting all of those job descriptions updated. And that's part of the logic when the city set this up years and years and years ago, that there were as many places as we can have a title that describes a classification of work, so that we don't have an individual position for every administrative assistant. As much as the work they do, the actual work they do may be different from the police department to the planning department to human resources, that administrative assistant is doing the same skill set, and the expectations, the responsibility level is the same. So that's why we try to group as many like jobs under one title, and then they're just in other departments. Now, there's some things that you'll see on your classification, like the cross-connection inspector. That's someone that we only have one of, and he's out checking water connections. And there's no way of lumping anyone else in that classification. That's a unique one-for-one job. But our office managers, our administrative assistants, accountants, there are multiples, appraisers, there are multiples, field supervisors, there's several of them that, while their day-to-day tasks might be slightly different, their overall type of work that they're doing is similar.
And forgive my ignorance. What does the human resources department look like? I mean, how many people, or am I looking at it? I mean, I just.
Well, we're extremely attractive. No, what we have, our structure in human resources is the director, which is me, and then we have 2 professional human resources specialists. Those individuals are doing our primary recruiting, hiring, interviewing of basically every position in the city, with the exception of the seasonal recreation positions that the recreation department hires their own T-ball instructors and lifeguards and whatnot. But any of the professional positions and most of the part-time positions, we're hiring. That's their primary job. Each of them also have a specialty. One specializes in workplace safety, and one specializes in benefits, as far as our health insurance, managing our health insurance and COBRA and things like that. Then there is an office manager, and then we just hired, just a short while ago, we just hired a part-time recruiter. We used to have some office help in that position, but with COVID, due to not being in the office, we never filled that position after the incumbent vacated it. And now we have another, although part-time, professional recruiter that's helping us, because hopefully you're aware of the great news that the Troy Library is going to be moving toward a 7-day operation. And due to the new millage that passed, we have a lot of people to staff for that organization to get it up to full speed. So our part-time recruiter, that was a part of the reason why we decided to make that transition. So in summary, HR director and 2 specialists, an office manager, and a part-time recruiter.
For how many employees how many employees? So you got 4 plus 4.
Well, we have approximately, that number I don't have right in front of me, and I always hate when I don't know that number right off the top of my head.
No worries.
It is about 400 full-time employees. I think we're a little bit under 400, about 360, 370, something like that.
Okay.
And then our part-time employees surge normally in the summer. So we're normally just around 500 actual bodies. And but that doesn't include all of Aileen's election workers. We don't count them. She's got tons of those.
So you're working hard. I will stick up for you.
We are really working hard. Yes, we have a lot of positions that we're filling.
Right. No, it looks like it. You're working hard with that many people.
Any other
Jeanette.
questions?
Yeah, just a couple of questions.
Yes.
Was there a market position or pay policy or philosophy that was discussed as part of this study where in comparison with market rates, where Troy personnel, these positions are to be positioned? And were any of the employees basically above the range? So how did you deal with that?
Again, we were pretty lucky because when we had individuals placed in the new ranges, we didn't have very much concern for them being out of range. The part of the problem that we ran into with our previous classification and pay plan was that we hadn't updated our pay ranges. They were very wide, but we hadn't updated the pay ranges and expanded them since 2014. So individuals were bumping up against the top of those ranges, and if merit increases were given, they were given the equivalent in a lump sum instead of moving their salary. So unfortunately, we were
You were below
counting
market.
those salaries. Yes, which caused no one to really be too high when we looked at it. What actually some insight into the plan is that what we found when the consultant reevaluated our positions is that they really pulled our bottom positions up much more than our top positions. We were doing okay in the more highly paid positions, but it was our bottom positions that really had the bigger movement.
So was the idea to be sort of average in terms of peers or your comparables?
Yes. Now, I didn't, I'm embarrassed to say I didn't review that right before the meeting because since you're reviewing the classification plan and not the pay plan, but I do believe that we were at a 75% of market value that we were comparing our wages to.
Jeanette, I have-
Yes.
I have a couple of questions. So none of in Auburn Hills, we have quite a few of these positions are in a union. So these are not union positions, correct?
Correct. None of these classifications are in the union. We do have a clerical union, and it has very distinct positions that it represents, and these are not in the scope of that union.
What about like your DPW, like see our cross control connection control inspector that it's in with our DPW, he's in that union.
Yep. So our DPW contract again very much specifies it is mostly laborers. The only positions that aren't direct laborers are our mechanics and the engineering inspectors. But this particular water inspector not bargaining unit work from the AFSCME labor union either.
How do you think this will affect
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
That's
go
okay.
ahead,
Pam,
Pam.
go ahead. Then Jeff's next.
My question is, I'm not sure when your contracts are up for negotiation, or I'm sure some of them fairly soon, but how does your pay plan, I guess I'm more looking at the pay plan, but how does that compare, or how do you believe that will affect negotiations based on where your sort of unions are relative to the market compared to now where you're going to be with this pay plan?
So we have settled a few contracts since we've been doing this plan for so long, and the unions were aware of aware of us going out for a market study. And it did come up as a discussion topic a few times. Obviously, when we do union negotiations, we do survey some of our competition, which can be fairly unique. As much we try to get apples to apples, so police officers to police officers and the like. So it did come up in discussion. One group teetered with the idea of wanting that evaluation and then backed off and decided that just basing their interests on getting similar percent increases, because no one necessarily received a pay increase unless they were outside of the range or they were not far enough into the range based on having several years in classification. No one automatically received a pay adjustment just because of this study. There were, if I remember correctly, both classified and exempt individuals. We were talking about, we were shocked. We thought we were going to be giving raises, we thought we needed to budget a lot. No, it was really a low impact focused in the library, recreation, and a couple other areas. But off the top of my head, I'm guessing it was about 20 of all of our staff, so not just these 53 people that I mentioned. It would be these and the other approximately 70 classified and exempt employees. Only about 20 of them needed adjustments based on coming into the range or being in class so long and the range moved. So Jeff, you had a question, yes?
Yeah, I'm going the opposite way. Did you have any retention problems based on this?
Based on the results of it, that it wasn't enough? Is that what you're saying?
Or based on the fact that some people, all they got were cash increases since 2014, right?
Yes. So I would say that people were not happy with that, but one of our real good sticking points is that in addition to trying to have market salaries that are competitive, those individuals that were bumping up against the maxes had been here long enough that they had other benefits that they would sacrifice by leaving. It pretty much our traditional pension systems are gone for the most part. They're being weeded out, but there are some individuals who still have some health benefits that they can qualify for, but they need to retire. They need to get all the way to the end. So that is a problem that we will have as we transition away from that plan, where we're going to have to make sure that our market salaries continue to be competitive. And as part of this plan, the recommendation from the consultant is to do regular surveys and keep moving those ranges and not have them sit there for 7 years.
Right.
That was, of course, never intended. That was not the intention, but a number of factors caused it to sit, and the wideness of the range made it only affect a limited number of people as they advanced.
Okay, that makes sense. So has this been communicated to all the people who are going to be affected by this?
Yes. So the employees received that preliminary information back in 2019, and then then we did make some adjustments because, again, our wages were wide enough. We didn't want to wait all the way until affecting this, so we computed where that minimum would we could move them safely within the range. So we made those adjustments for individuals that needed to come up to a new minimum within their ranges that they were already. So most of the individuals are mostly happy because the pay has already been changed. Some individuals will never be happy because they want a different classification, but yes, they've been notified of the results. And then the next step is after this board reviews and hopefully approves this, then the full plan with the wages will go before city council, and then they will become official. Okay,
One more question?
and one more?
Yeah. So do these, are there general adjustments based on, cost of living type stuff that impact the ranges on an annual basis, or are the ranges established to encompass both the general, increased costs associated with cost of living as well as progression within the classification itself?
So the ranges will now be scheduled to move with a cost of living, for lack of a better word.
Okay.
We've got
Okay.
some. It's not codified yet, but it will be as presented to the city council with our plan. So annually, the plan is that the ranges will move, and the employees will also have a merit component to be able to move through the range.
Through the range. Okay. So it's a combination of two. Good.
Okay. Looks like we're full. Okay, I'm going to hand it back to Aileen.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation for classification plan and pay plan?
I so moved.
Okay.
ahead,
Sorry.
One move, 1 second.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Okay, all in favor, or sorry, that's a different board. Some boards do an all in favor and everybody just says aye, and other ones they do a roll call. So Mr. Forster,
Yes.
Miss Gordon,
Yes.
Mr. Haight,
Yes.
Miss Parpart,
Yes.
and Miss Sackerson. Yes. Okay, so motion passes. The next item on the agenda is public comment. There was no public comment submitted for tonight's meeting, according to the rules that were laid out in the agenda and the notice for the meeting. So that concludes the business of the meeting, unless there's any other comments that board members would like to make. Okay, then we are adjourned. It's 6:33 p.m.